Hi guys, it's Lachelle, one of the domestic violence advocates here at the Avalon Center. And today I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the common misconceptions and myths about domestic violence. I think that as a society, sometimes we have some pretty rigid views about domestic violence, and I kind of wanted to talk to you guys today and clear some of those up. I feel like it's my job as an advocate to educate you guys with facts, and so I want to kind of take some of those myths and those misconceptions and turn those into facts for y'all. Domestic violence is due to poverty or a lack of education, is the first one I have. That is simply not true. You can have a lot of money, you can be poor, you can have a lot of education, you can have no education, you can have a very prominent social status or a very low social status. None of these things matter. So, domestic violence can still occur in all of those cases. I think that if you are an abuser, or if your abuser is financially well off or has a lot of prominent or powerful friends, maybe it's a little bit easier for that to be hidden or to keep it a secret, but those things are still happening in those cases nonetheless. The second one is that alcohol and drug use is a major cause of domestic violence. This is also a myth. I work in the court system, so it's not uncommon for me to go to court with a victim and for them to say, well, he was drinking when this happened, or he was high when this happened, or she was drunk when she threw that at me. I hear that a lot, but I think it's important that we realize that substance abuse is one issue and domestic violence is another issue, and they both need to be handled separately. And the reason I say that is because you can be a drug user or an alcohol drinker and not necessarily be abusive to your intimate partner. Just like you can be abusive to your intimate partner and not drink or use drugs. So you can have one without the other, which means that they don't cause each other. Only women are victims of domestic violence is the next one. That too is absolutely a myth. Statistically, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some kind of physical violence from an intimate partner. So those statistics are pretty close. I think for men, there's probably more of a stigma of coming forward and admitting that there's abuse in their situation. I think that we as a society make it really difficult for males to acknowledge abuse in their relationships. And I hope that we're getting to a point where it's not as hard for men to come forward with domestic violence situations, and I hope that that's evolving a lot for males because they absolutely can be victims of domestic violence, just as a woman can absolutely be an abuser. Women can be just as manipulative, women can be just as aggressive, and just as violent as a male can be. The next one is that abusers are violent because they can't control their anger or frustration. So I hear this one a lot in court. I hear victims quite often say, well, he just gets really mad and can't control his temper. He just loses his temper really easily. Well, once he gets to a certain point, it's like he blacks out and just does things that he doesn't mean to do. And one way that I always kind of counter that with a victim is, okay, so since we're in court, obviously law enforcement was called. He got arrested or she got arrested. When the cops got there, was he or she still abusing you? Were they still hitting you? Were they still being violent? What did that look like? And most of the time, they're going to say, you know, you're absolutely right. By the time the cops got there, they were calm, cool, collected, like nothing had even happened. And I'm over here a crazy mess because of what just happened. And so what that tells me and what I explain to them is, obviously, this person can turn it on and turn it off when they want to. If that's the case and they can turn it on and turn it off, then they can help it. It's not something that they just can't control their anger. It has nothing to do with lack of control of anger or frustration, and everything to do with gaining power and control over you as a person. And so explaining it like that is sometimes an eye-opener for people. And I also like to point out, does he or she abuse their friends? Do they abuse their mom? Do they abuse their boss at work? If they're not abusing everybody, then they absolutely are choosing to abuse you. Domestic abuse is only physical abuse. Domestic violence comes in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of things and a lot of methods that an abuser will use other than just being physically violent with you. Let's think about this for a minute. If I'm an abuser and I want control of you, and I'm using verbal abuse and mental manipulation and emotional abuse to keep you in the situation that you're in and to have control over you, and that's working for me, why am I going to hit you? I don't have to, because all these other things are working for me. On the flip side of that, the minute that you decide that you're going to buck the system, or the victim decides that they're going to try to gain their power back, that's when that abuser might resort to using physical force to remind that victim of who's in control. And so it's important to remember that typically abuse starts with that verbal, mental, emotional aspect before it ever becomes physical. And sometimes you'll have all these other things with no physical abuse. So it can come in a lot of shapes or forms. The last one is, if the victim does not leave the situation, they must like the abuse. This is simply not true. A victim does not stay in an abusive situation because they like to be abused. Nobody likes to be abused. It's important to remember in this situation that abusers work really hard to make a victim feel unworthy, unlovable, like they're never going to find anybody else, or to even isolate them so that they have nobody else or no other options. Victims stay in domestic violence often because they don't feel like they have any other options. It has nothing to do with liking the way they're being treated. I hope these have kind of helped cleared up some common misconceptions for you today. If you guys ever have any questions, you can always comment on this video. You can send us a message on Facebook on our Facebook page. I encourage you guys to like and share the videos that we're sharing. We appreciate all the participation that we're getting. If you are in an abusive relationship and you need help, or if you know somebody that's in an abusive relationship that needs help, please reach out to us on our crisis line at 1-800-641-3434. Thank you.